Hi, this is Herb Shapiro with the Dr. Vax channel, and we have a very exciting unboxing today. I have here a new Monoprice MP10. This is a printer that was just announced a week or so ago, and today we're going to unbox it, set it up, and start our first print. Okay, stay tuned and let's learn something together. Okay, I'm going to begin by cutting open the packaging on the side of the printer. And there is a stop. Read this before unpacking. Basically, it says that if I have a problem, do not contact the reseller. Perhaps I bought this from Amazon. In this case, I bought it directly from Monoprice, but instead connect with Monoprice. There is a user's guide inside. It almost looks like a Xerox copy. It is in color though. Not a very high quality user's manual, and very, very short. So basically it says to open up the packaging and then assemble. The installation consists of assembling the vertical rails onto the base. You can see how this is packaged. It's interesting that there is no inner box here. You can actually see the rails of the printer. So generally I find in that situation, the best way to unbox something is to turn it upright and to take the box off. So we'll see if we can do this without wiping out either our printer or our microphone. Okay, here we go. That was a little bit awkward. So you can see the printer here. I'm going to turn this around so I can see it. And we have the printer bed and the various rails. So I'm going to turn this on its side. Whoops. And there was a box of parts here. So this is a small box of parts. And in here are the connectors for the extrusion, a power cord, and a plastic scraper. So they must assume we'll still need a scraper to get the prints off the bed. Okay, let me turn this on its side. This is big enough to be a little bit awkward. Okay, now that I've wrestled the printer out of the carton, let's begin assembling it. Now I have a secret to share with you. I've done this first step a couple times already so that I could find the best way to recommend for you to do it. Because it is a little bit awkward attaching this frame, which now needs to be attached, to the printer. Now the first thing to note is that the logo, the IIP logo on the print bed, the base of the logo is actually the front of the printer. You can tell because that's where the cable, where the front control panel attaches. And on this printer, the extruder, not the extruder, actually the hot end, faces the front. So what I actually found was best was to snap on the hot end before I began, because it gave me a better reference and it kept it out of the way. Now what we want to do is attach this just like this. The problem is that if you turn it on its side, either this stepper motor gets in the way or it's not balanced well. So the approach that I found was best was to slide it back over the edge of a table so you could get to the screws from underneath, but it was still relatively stable. So that's what we're going to do here. The other thing that I found was helpful, put the bolt onto the Allen wrench and sort of hold it on there together prior to putting it through the hole. Put it through the hole with the Allen wrench in place, and then align the extrusion on top of it until you can get the thread to just bite. So that was much easier than my prior attempts where I tried to do it from the side a variety of other ways. I'm tightening this just finger tight now, and now that that's in place, I'm going to turn it on its side, on the side that does not have a stepper motor, and complete the assembly. This actually ends up being quite easy because you can look underneath and align the bolts this way. So that's the approach that worked best for me. Let me continue and tighten up these bolts to finger tight. Okay, now that it's finger tight, in the manual it says to put on the corner pieces that fit right here. Those are in the part box. Let's see if we can find some here. Here is a corner piece that goes on here. I'm actually going to wait to put those on until I put the Z-axis screw rod in place. Now that takes us to the next interesting thing that I learned the hard way. In the manual, it indicates that you should look for the screw rod at a location where there's a red circle. Well, I looked all over the printer. I couldn't find a red circle. In fact, I had to call technical support, and I went so far as to order another printer because I thought this one was missing a part. I was going to RMA this. Long story short, it is actually stored on the base of the printer. Here, we'll see there's a screw rod. Now, at first, when I first looked at the printer, I said, oh, that's very interesting. They have both a screw rod and a mechanism using a belt on this printer. And then I moved on. This is not part of the movement of the print bed. This is just a storage location for the Z-axis screw rod. So you loosen these couple of clamps here. There's also a clamp in the front. And then that comes off. Now I'm actually going to go ahead and replace these so that if I need to move the printer, I can do that easily. The next step is to install this rod. It goes in from the top. The beveled or part without a screw goes on the bottom. And then you slowly screw it in until it hits the bracket that holds it in place. If you continue to screw it, you'll notice that the axis will start to move up. I'm not sure exactly what the ideal position is, but it probably doesn't matter because it could, the motor, the stepper, will be able to move it to any position. So I screwed it just a little bit to make sure it's in well. Then I'm going to take and tighten the Allen screws, the hex screws here. Make sure that's tight. I'll make sure the bottom one is tight. And I think we're good to go. Okay, now that we've placed the Z-axis in place and locked it down, we're going to place the angle brackets on the side. You'll notice on the angle brackets, one of them has a dimple. That one with a dimple, you can perhaps see it here, is for the side with the Z-axis stepper motor. The way I like to do this is you put the second top screw in place, then use a small Allen wrench to position the other screws into the proper positions. That will make it much easier for you to screw these in. Our next step is to attach the LCD panel to the front. There are two screws in the extrusion here for that. This LCD panel looks to be the same size as the Mini Select. However, there is no knob on this printer, and it is a touch panel instead of using a knob. In addition, they did something that's very, very nice. The place where you put the micro SD card in is machined in such a way that you cannot inadvertently slide the SD card into the case if you miss the slot. There's a little piece of plastic here blocking that. That's a nice addition, very thoughtful, a very minor item, but very thoughtful. This is very easy to do because you attach this from the top. Okay, I just reread through the manual because I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing this. I don't see anywhere here where it tells you to attach the rest of the cables. Obviously, this printer will not work unless we do that. So let's go ahead and attach the rest of the cables. If I turn this printer on its side, once again on the side that does not have a stepper motor, you'll see there are locations for additional cables here. I'm going to actually route this cable underneath here. It's pretty obvious there's only one way these fit, how to attach these cables. Each of the connectors is a slightly different size, so you cannot get the wrong connector into the wrong location. Now, this next step is not in the manual, but I think it's a reasonable step to take to set you on the right path to success. And that is to check that the print bed is reasonably aligned, reasonably level to the print head. This is an auto-leveling printer, but you want it to be physically close. So my favorite tool for doing that is a Post-it note. On this printer, if you manually turn the threaded rod, you can move the Z-axis up and down when there's no power on the printer. And if you listen on the side with the extruder, when you get to the home position on the bottom right side, you'll hear the end stop switch click. That's the home position. So what I like to do is set the print head in the home position, and using the not sticky edge, I like to make sure that there's just a little bit of friction. So I'll press down on the print bed, I'll insert the paper under, make sure there's a little tension there. Then I'll go to the next spot. Then I'll go to the next spot. And make sure it's about the same everywhere. It just should feel a little bit grindy. And that seems like it's pretty good. So now the auto leveling will take over from there. But I wanted to get it physically close. If it is way off, if you take off the magnetic print head, I'm going to raise this up a little bit now. If you take off the magnetic print head, you'll see there are two screws here. If you release those two screws will allow you to move the magnetic plate up and down if you need to make very coarse adjustments to the position of the print head. Okay, I'm going to put that back in place now. We are ready for what in the electronics world we call a smoke test. Hopefully there won't be any. I'm going to make sure the printer is in the off position. I'm going to verify there's a little red switch here that it's in the right voltage position. Mine is in 110. And now I'm going to attach the power cord and plug it in. As I was preparing to plug this in, I realized I did miss one step. We still need to attach the filament holder to the printer. Let's go ahead and do that. The filament holder comes in two pieces that attach together like this, and then it screws onto the back. And let me go ahead and screw that in place now. While only made of sheet metal, it is still satisfying that this seems to be quite sturdy. And it does appear that a roll of filament should line up nicely with the filament detector and extruder. While we're here, let's point out a couple very nice features. This is a Bowden setup, but there is a filament out detector right here. The filament goes through the detector to the extruder gear and then to the hot end. Okay, we're ready to get started here. I'm going to first turn the printer on and see if it powers up successfully. It does, and the front panel is now on. I'm going to turn the printer off and insert the micro SD card. This is a SanDisk card. It's actually a relatively good card. It's a 16 gigabyte card. And that goes right in the side here. And as I said, it's nicely configured so you can't inadvertently slide it underneath the display. It goes in upside down. I'm going to turn that on. Now, before we continue, there is a label on the print surface. I'm going to take and peel that label off. And we'll dispose of that off to the side. Now, their recommendation is just to go ahead and print. We did a rough level check of the level of the printer, and it did seem okay. But I think I'd actually prefer to see how the auto level works. So we're going to go to Move, and then to Tune, and I'm going to click on Auto Level. And let's see how that goes. That was quite impressive. I actually lost track of count. I'm used to the Prusa, which does 5 points. That was clearly either 9 or 12. But that seemed to work very, very well. And it says bed level correction, close, far, auto, index. So you can manually adjust from there as you see how your first layer prints. So let's go ahead and go to back. And I'm going to put some filament in here, and we'll see if we can get a first print to print. They do supply you with a mini roll of filament. I'm going to actually use Hatchbox Black because it's a known commodity to me. I think it prints very, very well. And let's see here. I'm going to cut this off on an angle. Now I'll go to the front panel to preheat, and I'll preheat the nozzle. I like to preheat it when I'm loading filament to about 210, so we'll let that heat up. Now that the printer is up to speed, I've zoomed in here so you can see a little bit easier how you would load the filament. You load it through the filament sensor, and then you can actually see it come out into the extruder. You press the extruder in just a little bit to let that through. It goes into the Bowden tube. If you press this too hard, the filament will shoot to my left, which will make it hard to get into the tube. Then you press it forward until it hits the end of the extruder. If you press a little bit, you should see filament coming out. Once you have manually pushed the filament up to the beginning of the hot end, you can manually push it through. But you can also, let's go back to the beginning to show you all this. You can go to Move and then use the extruder movement to verify that filament can be extruded. That works very, very nice. Okay, we're ready now to start our first print. All you do is go to Print, select the item you want to print, and off it will go. We'll come back in a few minutes after this print has started. It's going to first heat up to temperature before it starts the print. Pretty traditional startup procedure. Now that our print is completed, let's see if the spring steel plate works well. There are notches on the two sides to lift the plate off. We're going to flex this both directions a little bit. And we'll flex it just a little bit more because this has a raft. And it came right off. Very, very nice. And let's see, the raft also came off completely. Very nice. There's a little bit of stringing at the bottom where the raft is. Overall, this is really a very, very nice print. The top of the ears are almost perfect. The details in the lettering are very nice. There's a little bit of stringing under this hand that may have been caused by me messing around with speed. I was experimenting with going up to 150, 200% to see if it would blow up completely. It did not, but I believe it left a little stringing here. There are a couple of layer imperfections, and it'll be interesting to see if that's a result of having a single screw lead instead of dual screw leads. I haven't adjusted these rollers at all, but clearly they can be tightened and they can be shifted right and left. So very nice, very, very nice first print. Let me summarize my observations about this printer. Overall, I am very impressed. I think that Monoprice made a number of very good trade-offs for a $400 printer. I think the inclusion of a spring steel print bed, removable magnetic print bed, I think the touch screen, I think the filament sensor, which I have not tested yet, the removable extruder, they call it the extruder, it's actually the hot end, is a very interesting choice because this is still connected with a whole bunch of cables. On the end of the cables there are connectors. It would be possible to take it all off, but it is not possible to easily remove the cables from this assembly. So the assembly and the cables would have to be replaced together. One of the other areas, though, they did a very nice job, is they have a lot of adjustments. So I can adjust on a macro level the position of the hot end. I can adjust the tension on the belt, and in fact, this belt feels like it might be a bit loose. There's a belt tensioner here that I can use to adjust the belt. And overall, I am quite impressed. There are two areas where I think Monoprice could have done better. First, the Wi-Fi support is the same, appears to be the same Wi-Fi support that you have on the Mini Select, and it stinks. If you have a dual frequency network on a single SID, that means you have one Wi-Fi ID for your home, and you're using dual frequencies, more current Wi-Fi endpoints routers, this will not connect to it. You'd have to set up a separate single frequency, 2.4 gigahertz frequency Wi-Fi network for this printer. I plan on putting OptiPrint on this printer, which will solve that problem for me. There is a single vertical screw rod. We'll see if that makes much of an impact. And the last thing that's just a bit bothersome is the only way you can get the printer profile, it's a specific machine profile for Cura for this, is via the Windows executable. Well, I have a Mac. That does me no good. And it is somewhat difficult in the current version of Cura to move a machine profile, not a print profile. Those you can export and import, but a machine definition profile. I ended up just bringing up the executable on an old Windows laptop and copying the parameters into Cura on my Mac. And I will share those with you. So overall, my impression is absolutely a thumbs up. I think this is a very solid printer at a $400 price point. I'll be doing some more elaborate testing, but this first print, this is the best Monoprice cat I've ever printed. It's really rather remarkable. This is Hatchbox PLA that I printed this with. So thanks for watching. Hope this was helpful. I will continue to test this. I will compare it against an Ender 4 and against a Prusa i3 MK3. But overall, between the all-metal frame, the all-metal hot end, the removable spring steel plate, the adjustable belts, the touch screen, this is a winner in my opinion. Thanks so much. If you enjoyed this, give me a thumbs up. That helps me a lot with Amazon's positioning. Subscribe to the channel. Have a great day.